Good morning. My name is Sheila Lamb, and I'm with the Virginia SBDC Network. For those of you that are not familiar with our organization, the Virginia Small Business Development Center is a partnership program between the U.S. Small Business Administration, George Mason University, and local host institutions throughout Virginia. With 27 locations across the Commonwealth, we provide training and technical assistance to small businesses in their local communities. Our one-on-one advising services are available at no charge. Today's webinar, Strategies for Maximizing Tasting Room Performance in the Craft Beverage Industry, is presented by the Virginia SBDC Network. We are recording today's presentation and it will be posted on our website, virginiasbdc.org. Due to the large number of participants, everyone's microphone is muted, but if you have questions during the presentation, you can type those into the Q&A box. We have also enabled the live transcript function, which you can show or hide via your own meeting controls. And now it is my pleasure to introduce the Virginia SBDC Craft Beverage Assistance Program Manager, Chris Van Orden.
Thank you so much, Sheila. Good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining us for this discussion on maximizing tasting room performance. As Sheila said, my name is Chris Van Orden. I'm the manager of the Craft Beverage Assistance Program at the Virginia Small Business Development Center at George Mason University. The CBA program is designed to provide industry-specific assistance to Virginia's craft beverage sector. So today's program will be a free-flowing conversation about the strategies that breweries, wineries, and cideries can employ to get more out of their tasting room. During our conversation, you can enter any questions that you have in the Q&A function, and we'll do our best to answer them either during or after the webinar. Do not be shy. Please chime in. So I am excited to introduce my speaker today, Andrew Coplon. As founder of Secret Hopper and Craft Beer Professionals, Andrew helps breweries nationwide create more memorable and profitable taproom experiences using database insights gathered from thousands of visits. Welcome, Andrew.
No, I'm very excited to be here. Thanks again, Sheila and SBDC for having me.
All right. Well, before we dive in, can you give us a little bit of sense of your work? You don't have to name names or anything, but what types of clients do you and constituents do you serve?
Yeah, I'll tell a quick story of how I even came into this role, because I had a little bit of a journey there myself. I think a lot of people who are tuned in today are probably maybe not in the beverage world right now, but curious and get into space. And that's truly the fun of the journey of it. So I spent about 20 years in the food service industry. I worked at stadiums and arenas all across the country, but I was an entrepreneur at heart. I always had ideas. My wife was very used to me sending her these random ideas. So there was one fateful day, probably about 6 years ago. She was working at an animal hospital, and I texted her. I said, "Hey, Stacie, I've got this great idea for a business." And she was very used to having me having these ideas, and she often humored me. So you see those dots going on her, iPhone as she's waiting to respond. And I texted her. I said, "Hey, Stacie, we're going to start a mystery shopping company for breweries called Secret Hopper." And those dots are appearing. And she texted me back, "That's stupid." So what do? You buy the domain name, you flesh out the business model, and you get started. So the first business I launched in the beverage industry was 6 years ago, called Secret Hopper. It's a mystery shopping company for breweries, but we work with breweries small and large, everyone from the brewery and planning to the industry leader who's been around 25 years with 10 locations across the country. When you have a tasting room, everybody has different goals. The goals I think for most are create more memorable experiences and more profitable experiences, but we work with breweries on an individualized level to find out what their goals are and help them achieve results.
That's awesome. Thank you so much, Andrew. And I know you also serve as a great convener in the space of just being aware of who's working on what and putting people in the room. So definitely appreciate your service in that area. Kind of diving in, let's start, by setting the table. Can you share some background on the importance of tasting room sales and any recent industry trends that you've been tracking?
Yeah, absolutely. When I first got into this 6 years ago, I was preaching the importance of customer experience. But even 6 years ago, a lot of tasting rooms still had the philosophy, if you brew it, they will come. I was all about, you need to have that overall experience and reasons people will, come visit your location. And now, speaking to the beer world, we're probably at nearly 10,000 breweries. So it's become even more important that you offer just more than beer. And, when we're talking about the taproom experience, I like to think of it as like a Venn diagram, something like you would look at elementary school, those three circles that, connect in the middle. And what I believe are the important factors that anyone who opens a facility that's serving beverage on site should consider: you got to make a good beverage, whether it's beer, cider, wine. Unless you're putting out a quality product, you're not going to succeed. So you got to have that. And it's important. That's when someone comes, that's what they're coming for the most part. You got to have that. You also have to have a memorable atmosphere. How are you unique? When someone leaves your tasting room, how are they going to describe it? Think of it almost as the elevator pitch they're going to give their friends and family of why they came to your location. And the other aspect that's really important, I believe, when creating this tasting room experience is your staff. You have to have engaging staff. And when you combine your liquid, when you combine the atmosphere and you combine wonderful staff, you get to that intersection right there in the middle, which is creating a wow experience. And that's truly what's important these days, everyone. You got to have that wow experience. People are more intentional with where they go out and where they spend their money. Partially pandemic influenced, people were going out quite less for a little bit. And when people were going out, they wanted to do more. No longer were they looking for somewhere they could just go and have a beer, a glass of wine, or cider. They wanted the whole experience. They wanted the beverage, they wanted the entertainment, they wanted engaging staff, they wanted food to pair with it. So when you're creating, your experience that you aim to put out in your tap room, you need to think about all the factors and all the reasons people are going to come to your establishment, because that's how you're going to separate yourself.
That's great. So clearly tasting rooms, right? I mean, all the more important these days, as distribution gets tighter and tighter for everyone, and having that memorable experience, the good time, tasting room really contributes to, the bottom line to your profits overall. Beyond straight revenue, how else can a tasting room contribute to a company's success?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question, Chris, because obviously you have a tasting room because you want to make money. You don't just love making beer, cider, or wine, or whatever it may be. You need to make money to stay open. But your tasting room is the epicenter of your brand. It's where all those feelings and memories are created. One of the stats that I love to throw out there, and I quote a set of data that we have through Secret Hopper. It includes 6,000 unpaid brewery visits. So some of the numbers that you may hear me mention today are from that. And think about when someone comes to your business for the first time. You don't know them, they don't know you. They're coming because someone invited them. They're excited to try what you have available. They're coming for an experience. If they come and have an experience where it's low engagement, the staff are just going through the motions, and they don't really have anything exceptional, they're only 46% likely to return. But if they come, they have that memorable experience that we talked about a moment ago. That's great beverage, great atmosphere, great staff. They're 99% likely to return and recommend that business to others. And why this is important is beyond direct revenue is because you're creating those feelings that they're going to associate with your tap room. They're going to come, they're going to have a good time with their friends. They're going to remember how engaging Chris was behind the bar. They're going to remember talking to Sheila at the table next door to them and the community it brought together. While you are trying to sell a product, it's really about the association they have with your brand, and creating these memories in your tap room. It's going to make them more likely to buy your beverage on the shelves when they see it at the supermarket, Total Wine, the liquor store, whatever it may be. They're going to already have that memory and association. They've seen your branding before, that familiarity with what you're doing, and it's going to increase that likelihood for them to want to experience your brand again, whether it's purchasing it on the shelves or whether it's coming back to your tap room for that other experience to share with other friends and family. So you really got to think about it on the feel good level, and often it's hard to track because you can't really quantify the lifetime value of someone based on these feelings of excitement and enjoyment they had. But the data shows that when you're able to build these memorable connections, they are more likely to return, and that's going to make your business more successful indirectly. But also you're going to see the increase in your bottom line because these guests are going to come more frequently and they're going to spend more, and the data shows all of that.
Yeah, I like your point about the impact on like distribution. This it still has direct ties to sales, even beyond that encounter, even beyond all tasting room encounters from there forward, because using that high touch experience that you can have there, alcohol is not a field where people get into it and they just buy, oh, this is the best price. We're not selling widgets here. There's an emotional attachment to it. You're not buying it in purely, economically logical senses, right? There's a lot of other elements that get tied into that, and leveraging the tasting room to be able to kind of drive that behavior out when when it's several steps removed, right, from that tasting room experience. There's a long tail to that.
And with so many, tasting rooms across the state of Virginia, I know I'm in Norfolk, Virginia. I've probably got 25 plus options within 25 miles of my house. I don't have time to visit them all. And so often I find myself going back to the places that I'm familiar, where they treat me, they welcome me, they know my name. There's the aspects that you can't necessarily quantify, but I feel that connection to that business. And those are the ones I'm going to frequent more, the ones that provide that overall experience.
Yeah. And some of this stuff, right, is not easily quantifiable, right? Like you're saying, it's emotional. It's things that you obviously have a treasure trove of data when it comes to doing the surveys, post-experience surveys, but as much as possible, right, in order to make those informed decisions, people need to be able to track, right, as best they can. So what kind of systems should a producer have in place to ensure that they're getting the most out of their tasting room?
Yeah, I think in many tasting rooms, the POS system can be your best friend. You probably have a POS system in mind if you're, getting ready to open, or if you are already operating, you already have a partner. Get to know the data that they offer. Don't just sign on for a POS company, get the reports, but not know how to read it. Talking to brewery owners and business owners nationwide, a lot of people don't come from the hospitality industry. A lot of people don't come from the beverage industry. You might not have experience accessing this data before. And it's so important to understand it. If you can have all this data, but unless you know how to use it, it's not doing you any good. When you're looking at this data, the metrics that I always really like to think about, how many guests are coming through your doors, how much are they spending? That's going to give you the revenue, obviously, of course, but how much is each person spending, and what can you do to increase it? So, talk to your POS providers and understand the metrics that are available for you. And then it really comes down to staffing. You've got all this data. In the staffing, training, metrics, they all go hand in hand. Chris, I know we've talked before about, things like this, and they all kind of blur the lines of the questions we can dive into today. But, when you have all this data, you want an ability in this tasting room experience you want to put out there, you need to first off make sure your staff's on board. I think that's very, very important. When you're trying to create this overall experience, your team needs to understand their goals. It can't just be management and ownership setting these goals and everyone, just serving the product, not knowing really, what's going on. So it begins really with the hiring process. You want to make sure you're hiring people who share your values. It's easy to find people who are just looking for a job. Well, it might be a little more challenging these days, but it's better to have people who are passionate about what you're doing and understand the reasons for doing it than people who are just there to serve a pint, pour a glass of wine, share some cider. You want to find people who understand what you're trying to do. And then we're going to talk back to that POS system and the metrics that it offers. How are you monitoring your team in those metrics? For example, one metric that I like to look at is to-go beer. I could talk about to-go beer all day long. If when Chris is behind the bar, we're constantly seeing guests 50% of the time purchase to-go beer, but when I'm behind the bar, it's only 20% of the time. That's probably a direct reflection of engagement. And it's important to monitor metrics like this. We can dive into some more metrics shortly to kind of see how all your team members are engaging. But ultimately, when you get your team excited about doing something as simple as selling more to-go beer, it's going to help increase the bottom line. It's going to show that buy-in that they have. They're going to be a better representative for your brand. And when you're bringing people on to work in your tap room, don't just assume they know what to do. This is a mistake I see so many business owners in so many different industries mistake. Just because someone's worked in a restaurant before or a tap room before, you throw them to the wolves. They've done this before. They know what to do. Every business is different. Every business has different systems in place. Every business has a different mission. Do they understand your history? Do they know how to tell your story? Do they know how to share and educate guests on your products? While often in the beer world, we aim to be maybe anti-corporate's not the way to say it, but they don't want to be called corporate many times, But so many things like the onboarding experience are so important to make sure people can be proper representatives of the brand. So make sure you have systems in place, whether it's a simple checklist that you go over when you're training someone on their first day of work, or a more, thought out employee manual that people have to reference. This is extremely important in my opinion. And, when I talk checklists with people, I love checklists. I've got a book on my back shelf called the Checklist Manifesto, which really talks into, the reasons any industry should have this, whether we're talking, craft beverage to airline pilot, and the reasons people have these. But when someone's having that first day at your tap room, you might take for granted that they know how to run a credit card. but take the time to show them. They just simply check that box off. Do they know where the mop closet is? Do they know where the light switch is? These are all really silly things to say out loud, but there are things that may make their life easier and your life easier, and important tools to give to your team members. So, that employee experience isn't just beginning after they've been there a week where you see how they're doing. It begins the moment they interact with your brand. So I think the employee experience ties directly into these metrics. You first have to give your team the tools to succeed. If we're talking selling more beer to go, we can talk all day long why that's important, but unless you train your team how to do it, we're not going to get to that goal. And then once we create these goals for the organization as a whole, but also for your individualized team, you have to ask yourself, why did they care? For everyone here, I don't know if you're opening already or you're in the course of getting there, but why is someone who's just hired to work a few shifts behind your bar even going to care about selling more beer to go? What skin in the game is it for them? If they're making an hourly wage, they're going to get their tips. Why are they going to be encouraged to simply ask that question, Chris, would you like to take some home? So you have to give them that added motivation. One of the obvious motivating factors is, we see, especially in brewery tap rooms, that when someone sells maybe a crowler or a 6-pack of beer, the guest is going to tip on that total amount. So instead of just tipping on $20, they're going to be tipping on 35. They're going to give you that 20%, 25% on the overall amount. We see that happen most of the time. So step one, they're going to be getting that greater tip anyways. But if you can get half your tabs to be 15% higher, that's going to add up really quickly. So the motivated team worker, the rock star you have on your team, they're going to get it already. They're going to want to offer that second beer. They're going to want to offer that to go. They're going to want to offer that merchandise. They're going to see the value in it because they're a rock star and they get it. But unfortunately, everyone you hire is not going to be like that. So I really like to dive into motivation. And Chris, at any point, Sheila, at anyone, cut me off at any point, want to dive into something. But when I'm talking motivation, because it ties directly into these metrics that we're ultimately going to get to measure the success of a company, there's 3 types of motivation I really like to talk about. I like to talk about rewards. Hey, whoever sells the most to go beer, wine, cider this weekend is going to get a $25 gift card to a local restaurant. That's the easy way. Give them something physical. And when you're talking rewards, don't just think of something yourself. I know it's easy often for management ownership to make these decisions, but I've done some trainings at local breweries in Virginia, and so often the breweries have never had a team meeting. So that's a quick aside. Make sure you're having regular get-togethers with your team, whether you're going to just be there to educate, go over protocols, or simply do something fun. That's so important. But at this team meeting I hosted at a brewery near me, I essentially asked everyone in the room the question, what's going to motivate you to sell more to-go beer on a Saturday afternoon? We went around in a circle. And I don't think I can see the chat right now, but feel free to drop, what would motivate you to sell more to-go beer on a Saturday afternoon? And the results were kind of amazing. And I've done this experiment at quite a few breweries, and it's all about the same. Some people wanted extra low fills to take home with them. Some wanted that local gift card. Some people wanted something to a local restaurant. All in all, it wasn't a lot. And at this local brewery I'm referencing today, all they wanted for the winner, and the team consensus agreed on this, was a $20 gift card to Chick-fil-A. Literally, a $20 spicy chicken sandwich or a gift card, fancy chicken sandwich gift card, was going to motivate the entire team to try to sell more to-go beer on a Saturday afternoon. So if you don't know what motivates your team, simply ask. Do an anonymous questionnaire, have a team meeting if everybody's comfortable sharing, but just ask. Simply throwing a small amount their way will see a lot of increase in revenue. And they're probably going to see higher tips too. So it's going to benefit everybody. So I really love rewards, but understand what your team wants to be rewarded with. I think that's really important. Also, people like to be recognized, whether it's the gold star on a wall or just a team meeting when you congratulate Sheila for hitting whatever goal you gave her. People like to be recognized. So people like rewards, people like to be recognized. One of the things I see a lot of business owners not diving into when it comes to what your staff wants, when someone's hired, why are they working for you? What made them even put an application in? Are they just looking for a job? That may be the answer. They may just want to make money. But often you might find people working in the beverage industry, they might want to be a manager someday. They might want to own their own taproom someday. They may have goals to work for, a larger company in a really high up position. ask them what their goals are. It's going to give you the opportunity to customize that experience for them. Often we talk about the guest experience and how individualized it is. And, I'm passionate about creating that perfect experience for each person that walks into your tap room, but you need to do the same for your team members. Understand what their goals are, and ultimately it's going to allow them to be better representatives of your brand. If you understand that Chris wants to be your next marketing person, or he wants to be the next tasting room manager if you don't have someone already, knowing what they want will allow you to craft that experience for them, to give them those tools and better monitor that success. So I know that was quite a tangent just now on motivation and training, but I think motivation training, it really ties directly into those metrics, because unless you give your team the training and motivation, you're never going to hit those metrics that you want.
Yeah. So when you say metrics, what kinds of metrics do you recommend companies track? I mean, revenue is a very simple number. There's lots of ways to drive a revenue, and revenue does not mean profit. So, and there's lots of other things too, efficiency, whatever. So what are some metrics that you recommend people?
Yeah, I think it's kind of divided on two levels. Owners, managers want to look more at, things like labor costs and just cost of goods sold and things like that. And that's definitely important that you have a good grasp on that. But when you're talking to your team members, the metrics that I like to monitor, we talked about selling more to-go beer on a Saturday. Look at your to-go numbers. Look at trends. Look at this Saturday when you encourage your team to do it versus last Saturday. What's the percent increase? And kind of look at those historical trends. I know we've had a weird few years. So everybody today, whether you're open or not, hopefully you're trends the first few years open are a little more normal than we've seen the past few years. But, look at those historical trends. I think that's really important. One metric I really enjoy looking at for your staff is tip percentage. Tip percentage is a great one because I think it really correlates to engagement. So, to pick on Sheila for a moment here, if Sheila's seeing an average of a 16% tip, but Chris is getting an average of a 26% tip, Chris is obviously engaging on a higher level. So I think that speaks directly to engagement. That's one of the fundamentals of that taproom experience. So looking at engagement's good. Size of tabs good. Average per spend per person. One thing when you're talking metrics, as managers, as owners, there's a lot of metrics that you need to focus on as business leaders, but your team, they can't handle all of these. They don't want to handle these. They're just there to make a few extra bucks for the most part. So you don't want to overwhelm them with 20 different things they need to be mindful of. I like to pick, get your team together and maybe brainstorm a session of what's important to you and what would they like to see monitored, whether we're talking tip percentage, whether we're talking to go beer, depending on your POS, once again, that's going to let you know what you're capable of measuring. So talk to them about what they have in place. They're going to probably give you metrics I didn't even know existed. But another metric I like to monitor, as a manager, as an owner, is the historical sales during certain time slots. When you're talking a lot of these taproom experiences, as we mentioned earlier, it's not just the beverage that you're serving, it's what's happening at that time.
Mm-hmm.
If on a Saturday afternoon, you decide to bring in, a live band, it's a free entertainment live band, you're bringing this band in to enhance that experience. And let's say you're paying $1,000 for this band. Everyone there is probably going to love the band, but you have to look at a couple things, get to know your guests. Did they actually come for that band, or did they just come because your taproom is a beautiful place to spend a Saturday afternoon? And then you can look at historical taproom sales from maybe the weekend before, same week the year before, and look at sales. Did that band generate any extra sales? Did you see that guests are hanging out longer? Did you see guests buying that third, fourth, fifth beer perhaps safely? Did it actually have a benefit? Because often I've seen that breweries will try these unique ideas, and I'm all about creating unique experiences, but is it worthwhile from a, the cost perspective? Would you be better off just having a Saturday afternoon where people come enjoying your space anyways and not having the band and seeing the exact same sales versus spending $1,000 to get a band in there? So you really need to look at the value generated from each event that you do. So when you're talking overall experience, definitely look at those add-ons that you're doing, whether it's trivia night, whether it's the band, whether it's having a market, is all the work you're putting in, is it justified? And so many times I believe it is really important to have different events and partnerships at your tap room, but make sure you're monitoring these. And when you're having an event like this, make sure you're having a debrief following. And I think this ties directly into metrics because, no event is probably going to be a win the first time. Think about trivia night, and every brewery, every tap room is probably having some sort of trivia night. Is the trivia night that you're having, is it adding to what you're doing on that Tuesday night? Look at it over time. Are you seeing more guests come, or are you seeing the same regulars come? And when it comes to these events, I really believe you should try anything once. You've got that slow Tuesday night that you're doing nothing on right now. Try that trivia night and just try it and see, are you getting those same regulars as I just mentioned, or are you seeing a new audience come in? When you're looking at these events, really involve your team in the brainstorming session with them. Your teams, when they feel that empowerment and they feel like they're part of the process, they're going to be better representatives of your brand. So by simply having these team meetings where you're getting their input, it's going to make them a little bit more excited to be there. It might make them willing to promote the event. It's going to make them excited to, share it with their friends. So give them that opportunity to be part of it. But following the event, do a debrief, Look at the numbers. I mean, did you have the same revenue as the Tuesday before? Look at that. If you do a big event, put a lot of work into it, and it's generating no extra revenue, you might want to say, hey, let's pull the brakes on this one. It might not be a good idea. Often events are so, we'll say, easy to put out there, sometimes like a trivia night. So it might take some time to build it, but you need to give yourself deadlines and metrics you have to hit. If you're not hitting the goals you set, goal setting is another thing. If you're not setting goals for these events, how are you even judging your success? So you need to set goals for all of these events and look at, over time, if you're hitting them, if you're hitting the increase in sales, if you're hitting the larger number in guests, you need to reevaluate whether this is something worth doing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I like your point about tracking it against the counterfactual of like, well, what if we didn't do this? Maybe it would, you have a 10% bump in sales, but if it's, a major outlay, you're doubling your staffing for the day, it's not going to be a strong performer. And that's, it's a nice to get that big pop of revenue, but that does not tell the whole story. If you're making major outlays for $1,000 for the band and you brought in 3 more people for tasting room service. So based on that, are there any kind of creative uses or events or strategies that you've seen that have kind of outsized ROIs or anything like that? Anything that you've seen that kind of outside the box that kind of works well for people, and it may not be replicable, but
yeah, I don't think it's replicable. I think every tap room is a very unique experience. I had a call the other day, with some brewery owners and managers discussing, out of this world experiences. And this is kind of dark, but the brewery went into it hard. The brewery is an old funeral home, which is a unique experience in itself. And they offer like haunted Halloween tours, and they really lean into that angle to kind of attract their audience with the history of the building that they're in. I think every brewery, tap room, winery, whatever it may be, is a unique experience, and your audience is going to have different goals than the next audience down the road. Sure, things like trivia, music bingo, a farmer's market, these are things that work everywhere. But I think everyone really needs to, ask your best customers and those people already visiting your tap room what they want to see. It's all about that feedback loop. You need to ask your staff, what would they like to see in your tap room? And when they say they like to try whatever it may be, let them participate in the process. Make sure you have their buy-in. Make sure they feel like, they were part of getting to the end goal. So, ask your team, ask your guests what they want to see. I mean, you see the same regulars probably at your bar a few times a week. Ask them what they would like to see. Worst case, as long as it's not terribly expensive, give it a shot. But I think that's the fun of having these spaces. People want these unique experiences, and it's your goal to create it for them. So with regard to things that are, outside the box, it's going to depend on your audience. Yesterday, I had someone say a beer and cookie pairing is a big hit. I talked to another business recently that's doing like a chili cook-off with or like a local pepper organization. And that's something that they've built yearly. People learn it. And I think a beauty of doing these events is not just catering to your current guests who are already coming. That kind of ties into the metrics, because if you have these guests coming every Saturday and you're just having events for the people who are already coming, did you really need to have that event? I mean, granted, it's nice to have, but how are you getting new people in there? And that's the goal of any business, to make more money, have more customers, more people aware of your brand. So, partnerships are something I really speak to, whether it's a partnership on a basic level with a food truck. Food trucks are a whole nother conversation, but say you find a reliable food truck in your area who has an audience and they've never been to your brewery. That may introduce people to your brewery who have never been before. That's just a really basic example. But then say partner with a nonprofit. do that feel good event that's for a great cause and have them bring their audience there and have you bring them to your space and they've never come there before. And that I think really speaks to the value of that first impression. If they come and have a great experience, they're going to share it with their friends, family, and come back. Look at every business within, 5 miles of where you are, and what would that partnership look like? Is there a company next door to you that wants to have a holiday party? Make people aware that you have a space for that. Is there like a rock gym nearby who, can do some mobile interface where you can have this at your place? Try it out. Find these unique partnerships, because worst case, it doesn't work. You never try it again. But there are so many other companies and organizations probably already near you, your neighbors in particular, who are doing something cool. How can you combine forces to share that audience? And when we're talking partnerships, it is a two-way street. A good partner is going to do equal amounts of promotion for you. If you have that band who plays at your tap room Friday night, it's an awesome opportunity for them. But if they're not doing their part in promoting it, find a better band to come play, unless they have that built-in draw that's just always coming. But you need to find a good partner who's going to take the time and the effort to promote it, because it's a partnership, right? You need to find ways that you can align yourself with people who, share your vision, share your mission, but also want to share your space in the proper way. And, when you talk about these partnerships, I think one of the first questions we need to ask ourselves, does it align with your brand? If you're like a dog themed brewery partnering with your local SPCA, it's a no-brainer, right? So having like a puppies and pints night, go ahead and do that. It's a win-win for everyone. But, if you're approached about having some politically charged event in your tap room, how is that going to go over with your regulars? How is it going to, gel with your mission? You want to make yourself, ask yourself before you even talk about these concepts, do I believe in this? Do I align with this? How would this be received in my tap room? I think that's something, you and your guests need to discuss. Well, you importantly, but make sure it'll vibe with your guests. So when you're talking about these partnerships, you need to make sure it's a good fit. And, these partnerships are true ways you can expand your audience.
Yeah, I like that. Whether it's events or partnerships, they should all go toward either broadening or deepening engagement, right? And that's okay. Maybe the casual person will, kind of become a regular as a result of this series, or it's the best when somebody walks in, brought in through a partner, another person in town says like, I've lived a quarter mile away and I've never been in here before. And you say, okay, well, that's great. That's what did, and that's a very prime target for a regular, because they are so close. And then they said, I never thought I would be, like to go to the brewery or whatever, or the winery or cidery. That's that kind of thinking. I think we have to be mindful about what the audience is for each individual brand, and also the fact that by virtue of being in this webinar today, you are a more committed fan or more committed to the industry than your average consumer. So finding those other hooks to get the people in, and who knows what that's going to be, but making sure that it jives with what you're doing.
And I've talked a lot today about engagement, and my other favorite keyword that I've touched on a little bit is education. When you have that person who lives a quarter mile away and visiting for the first time, when they come to your tap room, maybe they're just coming for that event that their friend is dragging them to, but how are you going to make them feel connected? And that really comes in that education. Are you making sure that you're helping them find the right beverage for them? Are you taking the time to offer them a flight, ask them what they normally enjoy, getting them to have that right drink? Are you teaching them about your brand, why you exist, why the owner opened it, how you're engaged with the community? This is your opportunity to showcase, why you're an important pillar of that community. Because when they feel connected, when they know about your brand, they're going to be more likely to return.
Absolutely. Well, now we're going to go to the flip side of the coin real quick. What are some of the more common mistakes that you see producers make when it comes to their tasting rooms?
Yeah, it touches into what I talked about earlier about training. I think so often people just assume that someone's worked in this industry before, they know what to do. And I'll throw a data point at everybody. Think about as many times you've been to, a restaurant, bar, tap room, wherever it is, you have a glass on your table, you're nearly done with it, you're ready to order another, but no one comes by. What do? You probably get up and you probably leave. You either go home or you go to another establishment. Through our data set that we see on 45% of brewery visits, the staff is not encouraging that second drink. So I want to repeat that. Nearly 50% of the time, they're not saying, hey, Sheila, hey, Chris, would you like another? just that simple nudge, that simple touch point. But guess what? When you magically ask that question, we see tabs that are $6.50 higher, just by simply encouraging that second drink. So nearly 50% of the time, we're not seeing that. And that's a big mistake. I think it's important when you have that training with your team to make them aware of these little opportunities that make a big difference, and the importance of building these connections. Your staff, they're not going to be as passionate about you. They might assume that when someone comes into your tasting room, that they know all about beer, wine, cider, whatever it may be. But looking at the beer space, I think craft beer takes about 13% of beer sales by volume. So that just means a lot of people aren't spending their money on craft beer. So you literally could have someone walking into your tasting room who has never been to a brewery before. It happens. People have never been to these businesses before. We are all in the industry, so it seems normalized to us, but there's so many people who aren't having these beverages just yet. So that's why it really speaks to the value of education, and your team needs to be passionate about making sure they're educators. I talked to a cidery in Richmond. This was during the pandemic, when everybody was losing their staff, and they lost all their staff. So when it came to, rehiring, they ended up hiring an out-of-work teacher. Then they hired another out-of-work teacher and another out-of-work teacher. Then it was like 75% of their staff was out-of-work teachers. These people, they didn't necessarily care about cider, but they did have experience teaching people. And that was awesome. Whether they were used to talking to little kids or college students, they were skilled at these conversations. They were skilled at explaining things. And I feel that's almost more important than someone who's just a craft beer fanatic. You can teach them about beer, but you can't always teach someone to be an educator. So I think it's very important when the training process comes that you're teaching people how to be passionate about your brand and giving them the skills to do so. Whether it's, hey, make sure you're encouraging that beer to go and just watching the metrics and seeing who's doing it, monitoring the tabs and giving them the reward. Or, the to-go beer stat is one I also really enjoy. A mistake, these are mistakes based on data that I'm throwing right now, but I'll also throw in a minute mistakes based on more so just experience. But think about how many times you all have been to an establishment before. And, breweries, wineries, cideries, all these establishments, they want to take that beverage outside of the tasting room, outside of those four walls. We see that when someone is not encouraged to take a beverage to go, they only make the purchase on their own 9% of the time. And the data actually shows that staff are only encouraging that to-go beverage 19% of the time. So literally 1 out of 5 times your staff are saying, hey, Chris, do you want to take some home? 1 out of 5 times. And when they don't encourage it, the guest is making the purchase on their own only 9% of the time, literally less than 2 hands. But when you go, hey, Chris, do you want to take a 6-pack home? Do you want to take a bottle of wine home? The guest says yes 49% of the time. That's 50% of the time, nearly, the guest is going to say yes. So to go back to what I was talking about earlier, it just simply takes asking the questions. The goals are to make more revenue, see more repeat customers. And so often we think our team members know what to do, but these 2 data points, encouraging another beer, encouraging taking some home, they aren't happening in the frequency that they should be. So those are 2 mistakes that the data represents. But I think a mistake that we see management making, I think this happens a lot. We see management ownership make these decisions on their own versus involving the team in the process. As I mentioned earlier, this was a brewery I did a training session at. They had never had front of house and back of house in the same room for a meeting in their 2 years of existence. 2 years open, they never had a team meeting. The front of house wasn't talking to back of house. So lesson learned there, make sure you're having some sort of meetings with your team. It's going to make them feel empowered. You're going to have the opportunity to educate them. And this is a mistake I see so many businesses making. Bring people together in a room, whether it's just for beers and drinks. Bring people together because, when you and I, Chris, are working behind the bar on a Saturday afternoon, if we don't know each other, we're probably going to not work very efficiently together. But if we have that rapport, we like each other at a level, we respect each other, we're going to work together in a more team-like setting. And that's going to be valuable. You're going to see higher tabs because we're going to have that vibe going on that even the guests feel. So make sure your staff like each other. I know it sounds like such a simple thing, but so much businesses are not making sure they're not having those team building activities to make sure the teams are interacting with that level of engagement where they like each other and can work well together. So that's one thing. But also when it comes to your team, I talk about making sure that they like each other. You also want to make sure you're motivating them to do so. As I mentioned, most teams aren't giving people the tools. They're not offering the rewards I talked about earlier. And I think it's really important that your front of house staff and back of house staff interact. This kind of goes to the team meeting concept, but do your front of house staff know how your wine is produced? Do the front of people and back of house know, how it's being sold out front? You need to have these conversations. That way they can better understand your brand. And that's a mistake I see so many businesses making.
Yeah, absolutely. I was thinking about the different areas we're talking about, and I think if I'm going to put an overarching, concept to it, it's reducing the friction for desired behavior, right? And whether that's, hey, like it's a pain in the neck to go up, or I'm shy about going up and ordering that other drink, or like, I'm not gonna bother doing it. You could talk yourself out of getting that 6-pack to go or that bottle to go just by prompting them. Great. And then that goes on this, like the team side too, of like, hey, we want you to be getting the information from the back of house. We want you to have the insights, into our production process that makes us stand out, our unique value proposition. You may, your front of house people may not have a read on what's happening in the back. And by just putting them in the room, that discussion is going to happen, and it's going to make both sides better, right? And all it takes is just, hey, we want our teams to get to know each other better. Put them in the room. Sometimes it's that simple.
Right. And you had mentioned, making these things easy. I'll give an example of something I haven't talked about today. Merchandise. Merchandise is a great way to build your brand. And so often, you go into a tap room, you go into a brewery, and let's say I go to Chris's brewery and, he's wearing a shirt for the brewery down the street. As I'm interacting with Chris, I'm going to say, hey, Chris, how about that brewery down the road, the one you're wearing on your shirt? How's their beer? Well, it's fantastic. That's why I'm wearing their shirt. So instead of buying another beer at Chris's place, I'm probably going to go spend my time in the place down the road because I'm only in town for a couple of days and I'm going to experience that. So I think, a little thing that I see a lot of teams not doing, it's important to wear your own brand. Let people see it constantly, get familiar with your logo, get familiar with you wearing it. Then they'll see it on the shelves, be more likely to buy it. So encourage your team and have your team wear your brand as a uniform. But also when it comes to merchandise, breweries aren't pushing merchandise sales. I'm not saying like push it aggressively, but make sure your guests are aware of what you offer. So often breweries will put it behind the wall, behind me, a place that's not very accessible. And so let's say it's a busy Saturday afternoon. I'm on the fence about buying merch, and I look at that line at the counter, 20 people deep. I'm gonna have to bother that taproom bartender and say, hey, how much is that shirt up there? And do you have it in my size? I'm not going to do that. I'm going to walk out because it's too much of a hassle. But if you have it in a place that's easily visible, prices are marked, and people can touch it, I think that's a really important thing when it comes to merchandise. People want to feel it. Then people are more likely to buy it. So having things really accessible, whether it's merchandise or having your to-go beer, wine, cider fridge, right next to the register so the guest knows it. Make it easy for them. So often people coming to your tap room, they might not even know that they can buy your beer in your tap room. It sounds really silly, right, Chris? But with so many people, just getting into craft beverages, it could be their first visit there, and they might not know that the beer is brewed on the other side of that wall. So simply educating them and letting them know these opportunities exist is really important.
Yeah, I like that. It's true. It is. Like you track the consumer behavior. You move the merchandise from one side to the other, right? You make it so that people can feel the quality of your merchandise, whatever. And all of a sudden you see the spike, and that's all it takes. Sometimes it's that, and you have to try different strategies to elicit the behavior that you're hoping to get, right? It's not always immediately evident. Well, why aren't people buying beer to go? And it's like, oh, well, the reach-in was on the other side of the room. It was a pain in the neck to get, or like it turns out that it's on post off at the grocery store down the street this week and is 50 cents cheaper out in the market now, right? Whatever the case may be, doing those kinds of A/B experiments to find out, well, what does it take to get this number to increase or this number to decrease, whatever it is. But that comes down to this sort of measuring side and making sure you're tracking this.
Yeah. So another thing I like to measure, is how well you're staying in touch with your guests following their visit. We're talking a lot about the taproom experience today, but your goal is to get them to come back and buy more beverage. And we see that 86% of the time, tap rooms are not asking guests to sign up for their mailing list or loyalty rewards program. Having that contact information is huge. And when you open your business, or if you have it open already, make sure you're sending your audience those little reminders. Obviously, you're probably doing the social media thing, but email is fantastic. Shoot that email out on Thursday afternoon saying, hey, here's a spotlight of one of our team members. And did you know that we've got going on this week? Because worst case scenario, that person wasn't thinking about your brewery, and now it becomes an option for that night, that weekend, whenever it may be. So staying in touch in little ways. And as the data shows, 86% of people aren't being encouraged to sign up for these programs. And the POS system makes it so easy these days. Like as you're signing out, it can do it for you. It can literally say, hey, put your email address right here in to stay in touch, but make sure you're encouraging as well, because staying in touch following that visit is a great way to get people back.
Totally. Well, we've talked about a lot of different things. We've covered a lot of ground. If there was one key takeaway that you would want craft beverage producers who are tuning in today to take away with them, like what's one lesson? It could be very specific, it could be thematic, whatever you think. What's your parting words here?
Yeah, I mean, I think it depends whether you're open or not, but when you're interacting with your team, give them one metric at a time to focus on. Give them that one goal, give them a reason to motivate them for it, and pick that metric, whether it's selling more to-go beer, whether it's encouraging that second drink, or whether it's just simply taking the time to train them to do so, because you're going to see the results. So these little things that we take for granted add up to the big picture, and that's going to how you're going to see higher revenue and more repeat customers. So just literally, if you're in operation right now, tell your team right now, every guest that walks through the register to close out, would you like to take something to go? You don't have to sound like a robot. You can be like, hey, Chris, you really enjoyed that lager. Did you know we have it as a 6-pack? Find that authentic way to encourage it, because you're going to see results.
Love it. That's great. Thanks, Andrew. Well, unless there are any questions, we can give people back a few minutes here today. I know it's rush to the holidays. So, well, again, really appreciate the insights, Andrew. Clearly, we've got lots and lots of interesting areas to touch on here, is just scratching the surface, but really appreciate your thoughts and expertise, and appreciate everyone joining us for today's discussion. Yeah. Each month we host a new session in our craft beverage conversation series, so you can look for details on the January webinar coming soon. For now, I just like to again thank Andrew Coplon of Craft Beer Professionals and Secret Hopper for his time and expertise.
Thanks for having me, Chris. Thanks for having me, Sheila. I really appreciate the opportunity.
Thank you, Andrew and Chris. I did just post a poll. If folks could take a moment to fill it out, it's really short, but it helps us for future sessions to make sure that we are giving you the information that you are looking for in a concise manner. I think today's session was wonderful, and I appreciate everyone being here. Just to wrap up, you will receive an email with a link to the recording and the slides. In this case, there were no slides, but in the recording, which was a lot of good information. If you would like to sign up for upcoming webinars or access recorded webinars, please visit virginiasbdc.org/training. These resources are designed to be used in collaboration with your local SBDC advisors. You can sign up for a free and confidential session by emailing help@virginiasbdc.org or via our website. Thank you all for attending. We hope to see you at our next session, and happy holidays and happy new year.
Thanks, everyone.
Everybody.
Bye.